Hello everyone. So last week we talked about zentangles and how to do some different zentangle patterns as well as designing some of our own. And this week we're going to start on our final product. So I recommend finding a blank sheet of paper that doesn't have any lines or dots or squares or anything like that, just a plain sheet of paper. And I'm going to be drawing with a Sharpie today, but I recommend starting with a pencil and then tracing it with a Sharpie, since Zentangle is still pretty new to most of you. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to divide our paper into different sections, and you can do this however you want. I'm going to be using a ruler, and I recommend trying to get between 7 and 10 different sections. And so I'm just turning my paper around, my ruler around, and I'm just getting some different sections going. If you wanted to do a free form, which means you're not measuring it or anything, you're just kind of drawing all around. You could even start with a scribble and have it naturally divide into sections. It's however you want, but I'm dividing my paper into some sections. So let me see how many I have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm going to divide this in half there. So once I've divided my paper into these different sections, I'm going to put a new Zentangle pattern in each section. So I'm going to fill my whole paper with Zentangle. And what that's essentially going to do is create a background for a mixed media piece that we're going to continue next week. So for this week, we're doing our Zentangle background. We're going to put it somewhere safe, and then we'll talk about the next step for the project next week. So I'm going to just go through and I'm going to draw some Zentangles. Now, again, you can use patterns that you make up yourself, but you can also use some of my ideas if you're feeling a little stumped. So I'm going to start with this sort of echoing concentric circles thing. Concentric circles mean circles within circles. Which I think we did last week. And remember, I'm doing Sharpie so that you can see it. I recommend starting with a pencil and maybe even just leaving it with a pencil. But you could take a pen or a marker or something if you have one available. So I'm just drawing all sorts of different concentric circles. Remember, you can kind of play with how different things overlap to create something that's interesting. So this is a little tricky for our brains at first, but we just have to keep practicing to get our brains there. So remember, I start with something, and when it gets to the point of overlapping, if I'm about to accidentally cross over something, I'm just going to stop, but imagine that I keep drawing it. Stop. Imagine that I keep drawing it. I got a little off center there, but that's okay. Zentangles, luckily, are pretty forgiving when it comes to small mistakes, because there's so much going on and they're almost dizzying in how they are. You can there's some grace for mistakes. I'm trying my best to not accidentally go outside of the section. Some more advanced zentangles do kind of blend into each other, but since we're beginners, we're going to start here. Filling my whole space. Alright, so that's Zentangle pattern number 1. For my next Zentangle, let me think. Oh, I'm going to do some swirls. So I like to do little swirlies like that, where I go in and I turn around. And this one's probably a little tricky for some of you. So again, I encourage you to use your creativity to come up with your own thing. So I'm going to finish this one and then we'll work on another pattern. Okay, so I finished out this swirly one, and since I have two that have a lot of curved lines and different things like that, I'm going to switch it up by doing one that's more geometric. So I'm going to do this by taking my ruler, which if you don't have a ruler, even a piece of cardboard or a thicker sheet of paper can function as a straight edge. And I'm not being super precise with this, but I am filling this with vertical lines, like that. And then I'm going to make a grid by doing perpendicular lines. So remember, perpendicular means exactly in the opposite direction. They create a right angle, which when you put a bunch of them together, you're going to get rectangles or squares. And I'm doing my best to try to keep it in that same shape. And when I fill this one in, I'm going to, again, we want to think about not just leaving things as patterns like this, even though this is cool, but I'm actually going to take this a step further and color it in an interesting way. And so for me, what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide each square in half and color half of it black. So I'm dividing it in half, filling it in. Now, you might have a different way for how to do your grids. There's all sorts of different options of interesting things you can do. But this is what I'm choosing to do. So I want you to take your time on these. And so actually what we're going to do is I want you to take your time on just focusing on 3 or 4 sections today. And then keep this somewhere safe, and we'll do the rest of it next week. We'll take 2 weeks on our background so that we can make sure that we're not rushing. Alright, so I finished this. That made me a little bit dizzy. I'm going to do one more section today, And then that will be about my 30 minutes of art time. So I'm going to stop there, put this after this next section, put this somewhere safe, and then we'll keep working on this next week. So for this next section, I'm going to pick one more pattern, and I want to kind of think of something that's going to be a little bit different than what I have going on here so that there's some variety. Alright, so this one might end up being a little bit wacky, but I'm going to apply what I learned, or what we learned together last semester about one-point perspective. And so I'm going to put a vanishing point right here in the middle of this section. And out of the vanishing point, I'm actually just going to draw some wiggly lines that go all the way around out into the world. And I'm going to thicken those by drawing them a little twin. Like that. Oops, I have a paper under. This is kind of popping out. That's what's going on. Okay. So this is where it's going to get a little bit wacky, but I'm going to draw those contour lines that we talked about last week in between these shapes. Boop. They're going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and I'm going to stop when I get close to the corners, and I'm actually going to shade in the corners, and I'm going to shade in the space between my little twin lines here. So it kind of looks like a little tube, or I'm giving this illusion of three-dimensional stuff. Curve line, curve line, curve line, curve line, curve line, until I get so close to the edge that I'm like, I'm going to stop there. So I'm going to fill in the space between the two lines, make it thicker. Curve line, curve line, curve line. And again, if you don't like any of these patterns that I'm showing you, you don't have to use them. You can make up your own. I encourage you to make up your own. I don't want you to make art that looks exactly like mine. I want you to make art that looks like yours. But I'm trying to give you guys some ideas and some skills so that we can help grow that confidence. Maybe you do something that's similar, but your lines are a little bit different. Or maybe you like two of my patterns and then come up with your own too. So you copy two, the original two. I'm giving you freedom with that. Alright, almost there. My eyes need a break. This is so dizzying. Alright, so I'm going to stop there and we're going to pick this up next week. So I did about 4 sections, which is about exactly half of my sections. So I'm going to stop with that and we'll do 4 more sections next week. I hope you guys are having fun with this. Again, oops, I saw a triangle I missed. Again, I hope you guys are having fun with this. I hope that you're listening to some music that you like while you do this, because this is supposed to be a relaxing brain break sort of activity. But this is also good for our brain to kind of teach ourselves how to see space and fill space and use shading to fill it all in. It's going to be really cool. You're going to have this whole paper that's just filled with pattern, and then you're going to have some options about how to turn it into a mixed media work of art. So I'm excited to see where we go with this, but this is where we're going to stop for this week. Bye, guys.